I'm alone. This isn't going to be like the one episode where Mike edited me to be crazy. But yeah, so what we're going to try to do this year is the four of us are mainly, I think, me. But Mike was supposed to join me this morning, but I guess he is asleep. But yeah, we're going to be covering new releases, spoiler free reviews for your Friday morning, afternoon, whenever you listen, if you listen. Talking about kind of one of the latest titles that has dropped in the theater. So today we're talking about Nicolas Pesce's The Grudge. So a lot of people think this movie came out of nowhere, and I mean, I guess it kind of did if you weren't paying attention closely. What was happening between them doing a reboot, remake, pseudo sequel, and then changing hands of directors. Ultimately, still being in Raimi's hands, but switching directors for a short time. But still, it really did sneak up on us, and sometimes that's a bad sign. Sometimes it's a good sign because things are made in secret. This really wasn't made in secret, but it really did sneak up on us, and a lot of people, I guess, it caught them off guard. So, jumping into it, we can talk a little bit about the past with The Grudge before we actually jump into the movie. Recently, I was interviewed for a J-horror documentary, jumping around on kind of the history of the films, and where a lot of the fear stems from to the films themselves. So mainly, we're going to talk about mainly just The Grudge right now. So back in the day. Shimizu made a. I'll try to say these titles, because some of them haven't been really translated. But it was Gakko no Geidenji, which I believe translates to like high school ghost stories. So this came out in the 90s, kind of shot digitally, looked really cheap, but it was an anthology that a few filmmakers got together. The other one was Kiyoshi Kurosawa, who was well known for like Cure and stuff like that. So they got together and they made these short films and put an anthology for this setting around a high school with ghosts. And Shimizu had two shorts in there, which was 444444, and then I think the other one was called Katsumi. And both of those shorts featured both ghosts. So we have Keigo and then Toshi. So that's kind of where it stemmed from. He made two, and they're very short in the actuality in the movie. They're only just a few minutes. But he still was, and they are actually kind of creepy. Keigo one is definitely creepier, but so it really focuses on just surprise with the ghost, and then from then on, Shimizu made a Grudge movie, which was known as Ju-on the Curse in the 2000s. So before we jump into like the Grudge that was remade from the original, there was actually these shorts and then two other movies that were before it, which was just Ju-on the Curse, and they both had the kind of the same aesthetic as far as being that shot digitally. They look a little cheap, and they're not the greatest, but you can at least kind of see what people saw, especially Raimi when he saw, I guess he saw The Grudge first. Kind of where the scariness and the scare factors and could have been, more well developed, and that's essentially what he did when he made Ju-on the Grudge. So we have, the Curse 2, which was in the early 2000s, like 2000, 2001, and then I believe Ju-on the Grudge came out in 2002. So he made these four films. Shimizu made two shorts based on it. Then he made four films. They're all kind of standalone sequels. The Grudge 2 were actually the Curse 2, the Grudge 2. They do follow suit into one another, but they all ultimately are all standalone films. And then with Ju-on 2, the Curse, he literally kind of did like a Silent Night, Deadly Night type thing where it's like the first 30, 45 minutes, I forget how long. It seems like a long time. But he just rehashes the first film and then ultimately goes into the story of that. But he really kind of shined with the 2002 The Grudge, and that's where all of this kind of stems from. This is the powerhouse. This is the sequel that really set it over the edge, because it got a little bit wider release. It went theatrical, which Ju-on the Curse 2. The Curse 2 actually got a small theatrical release, but a lot in. If you don't know, a lot of films in Japan, they just go direct to video. But there's like no frowning upon that. I mean, nowadays we don't either in America, but at a time we did. Direct to video movies were shitty, and then the theatrical stuff was awesome to the general public. Now we're at a point where no one really pays attention to that. And we also have this whole indie scene where things are being released very, very limited in theaters. They always have been. It's been happening for years. It's just we're more aware of it, I guess. But anyways, direct-to-video movies in Japan, not really frowned upon. It just happened. They do a lot of films and things like that. I don't know the whole kind of sales tactic or money-making tactic behind it. I just know what's released theatrically and obviously direct-to-video. So, Ju-on the Curse was direct-to-video. Ju-on the sequel, The Curse, was released very, very limited for just a certain amount of days. And then The Grudge, Ju-on the Grudge, which we all know is the one that was released wide and did very, very well, and also got some play in America, which is where I believe Rami saw the film. So that's kind of the whole basis of these films. And then, of course, Shimizu remade his own film, or two films, The Grudge 2, here in America, and then they made a third one later on. So Shimizu has made the shorts. He has made The Curse 1 and 2. He's made The Grudge 1 and 2, or Ju-on the Japanese, and then he remade his own two films for America. So he's already made these movies quite a few times. And originally he was actually going to be the director of this new film, which I thought it would have been kind of ridiculous that a director took a short and basically made the film four times. So I'm kind of glad that we got a new set of eyes, especially Nicholas Pesci coming from Piercing and Eyes of My Mother, which are two fabulous, haunting stories. So good. So we kind of had high hopes for Pesci taking on this Grudge story. I expected kind of a more art house approach to this horror story, and we'll jump into that in just a minute. But so Shimizu remade The Grudge, which blew up over here in America, mainly after the successful remake of Ring, which Gore Verbinski made The Ring, and that was kind of unexpected, I believe, to Hollywood and producers, is that film taking off and being as big as it was. And I still consider the Ring remake probably the best remake of all time. I think Gore Verbinski did an amazing job creating such a beautiful and scary looking movie, not to mention the scares that are in the film. I think he took Hideo Nakata's just everything. It's kind of almost like Kubrick with the Shining novel. He really took the stuff that really shine in the film, put it in there, and then he added his own little narrative story, a more cohesive narrative story from the original film. But anyways, so back to the Grudge. They remade it. They made a direct-to-video third one with Shawnee Smith that actually tied into the second film. So we have the first film with Sarah Michelle Gellar, which takes place in Japan, by the way, which I thought was something. Obviously, Shimizu did that on purpose, but we didn't. They didn't ask him to Americanize it. We had an American actor. Basically, obviously you need to do that for the general public, not for people that are probably listening to the show. We don't give a shit. But to the general public, for Hollywood, they need to put an American actor in there. That's why they always say they're whitewashing. They have to, in a way, in order to make the money as greedy as they are. They don't really care about making the characters all Japanese, all Korean, if it's this kind of pseudo-American production that they're, you know what I'm talking about. There's no really need to get into it. It's just a stupid tactic. But anyways, he did actually, make the movie in Japan, and the movie takes place in Japan. And then the sequel took part in Japan, and then the rest took place like in Chicago or something like that. But anyways, he remade his own two films, and kind of a continuation story. Actually took part of the original or Ju-on the Grudge. He actually took elements to that and put it in a sequel. For example, the 3 schoolgirls that are in Ju-on the Grudge are in the Grudge 2, and that's kind of the story based around them and the Jennifer Beals character. So I still think the Grudge works, the American Grudge. I thought it was better than the Japanese version. Very much, I think he had more money, and he obviously had a good team behind him, and I think they really put him in the right direction as a filmmaker, making his own film with the budget finally that he deserved in this sense. I think that's the reason why he remade them so much, is because he was able to do what he wanted. And I still think The Grudge holds up. I think it's a good film. The Grudge sequel, not so much. I think it really kind of fell short. And The Grudge 3 is just kind of a mess. But one thing that I love about Shimizu is, I'll say this in a second, basically when we get into Nicolas Pesce's The Grudge reboot, sequel. So first off, this is not a remake. It is kind of a pseudo reboot for the series, if you want to call it that. But really, it is a tie-in sequel that takes place during the first film and well into the second film. There's no really jumping back and forth. But the film opens up with a caretaker leaving the house of the original Grudge, calling Yoko, who is the one that dies in the beginning, and then is replaced by Sarah Michelle Gellar because she doesn't come in on time. And they do mention the Williams house, which the Williams actually bought that house for the grandmother, who eventually sees the ghosts, the Keiko and Toshi. So anyways, the story picks up basically right there, bringing this curse to the States, Pennsylvania, I think. So spoiler free, you don't have to turn it off right now. The film is kind of an interwoven sequel that does acknowledge the other films, but doesn't really focus on them either. So we have The Grudge, and then it basically follows this character and follows the tradition of stepping into the house and you die. The story does have 3 narrative storylines that are taking place through a number of years, and it does jump back and forth quite a bit, to the point where it does get a little confusing. But if you're paying attention to the characters and you know what characters are in what timeline, it's fairly easy to pay attention and follow. People are saying it's a narrative mess. Nah, not really. It's just a little jumbled, but it's pretty. If you're paying attention, it's pretty easy to follow. And then basically that's it. That's the story. Now to jump into Nicholas Pesci. Nicholas Pesci is a very good filmmaker. Between Piercing and Eyes of My Mother, really, really great horror films. They're extremely well crafted. They have great sound design, haunting imagery. So bringing him into the table to remake, reboot, make this sequel of The Grudge, I was really into. But he uses kind of this really weird, dark style that was I the whole time I'm watching, I'm thinking, man, this feels like it's in the 90s. But he has this really kind of cool imagery to the film, and then kind of takes it from there. But the thing that bothered me, and this is where I was going to jump back to what Shimizu can kind of do, is that Shimizu's really, really great at scares. And one of the all-time one of my all-time favorite scares is in the remake of The Grudge with Michelle Gellar. Is that there's footage of the Williams sister at work, and she's looking at a security cam. Or actually, she gets attacked, and then the detective looks at the security cam and sees Keiko like rise up from the floor and then come to the camera, and it's a black face, this black kind of shadow appears, and then the eyes open and it stays, and it's really scary. It happens actually in the original Grudge, but there's too many cuts and it doesn't have the same feeling. But the cool thing about Shimizu and what makes the Grudge film scary is that he doesn't really use musical cues or loud noises or jump scares with his films. There's a couple, one or two here and there, but he really relies on staying on the image for a long time. So when Keiko or Toshi show up, he's very good at lingering too long on the ghost or whatever's scary. And sometimes it's actually revealed first that there's something in the room or a presence by the actor's expression or reaction, and then we are shown. But it's not even like a quick cut. He lingers on the scare, which again is kind of unheard of, because a lot of times in films we don't see the creature or beast or monster till the end of the film, or we're given quick glimpses and quick cuts and jump scares and lots of shadowy imagery to where we can't really make out what's there because the unknowing is scary. But Shimizu turns on the lights, daytime horror, and just really does a number of scaring you. And I think that's why the Grudge films are effective, especially the later ones, because he really lingers. And Pesci doesn't do that. He really relies on jump scares and quick cuts, which I didn't really expect because of his previous two films. They're so really well crafted in this kind of arty way. So I was expecting kind of the scares to be like that, and they weren't. The film looks good. I think it's well crafted. It does have this weird, dark, rainy, wet look throughout the film, which works for the tone of the movie. But his jump scares are not really, they don't really work. They're just kind of out of nowhere, and seems cheap from the kind of movie that he is making on the side to what he has made, which obviously we can't, look at his old films and say, well, we want you to do that. But it just doesn't fit. But other than that, it has really great actors. William Sadler's in it, Frankie Faison, Lynn Shay, John Cho. It's actually got a really great cast. Andrea Riseborough, who was mainly known for, I guess, Mandy last year. But just a really good cast. It's got a good score by, I believe they're called the Newton Brothers. They do a really fabulous job. But really, it takes the element of Keiko and Toshi out of the film, and it really focuses on these new quote-unquote ghosts. Which I didn't really care for, because there's something in the film that really bothered me, and it's that noise. that Keiko makes. I think it's called like the death rattle, but it comes, it's that very audible noise from her throat that I'm not going to do it, but everybody knows it's kind of, the Grudge kind of trademark. And the ghosts do it in that film, and it really bothered me because if it seems like he didn't watch the movies, is that the reason why Keiko does that is because her husband, which they're brutally murdered in the film, which does a great murder scene in the remake of The Grudge, the U.S. remake, by the way. Very, very violent. But he stabs her in her throat a few times. And the noise is basically her breathing, and it's just making that very, very odd noise. And it really bothered me that the other ghosts do that in this movie. It really kind of threw me off because I was like, Toshi meows because there's like this cat thing with Toshi, but like the cat and I guess Toshi are one now. But the thing with the ghost, it didn't really make too much sense for me why the ghost did it. But if you take away some, we're all going to have these little things that we pick apart in the film. But I'm not going to go off and say this is, up there with the other Grudge films. I think it's a decent film. Pesci made another good film. If it's a rewatchable, I don't know, maybe once. It's a little forgettable at times, I would say, because it doesn't really have those moments. And also, I think it doesn't have those moments because of this three-story narrative that he's trying to tell that takes place over a number of years, that jumps back and forth between years without really identifying right off. It's mainly you just have to, decide, oh, that character's in that timeline. That's this, little bit that we're going to be watching. So I think that kind of hurts it a little bit. One thing I really did like about it is that it's more of a police procedural than anything else. So it's really detectives trying to understand and figure out. It's actually a new detective on a case where these old detectives have went over. And she's kind of discovering these things that happen at this house in, the early 2000s. But the thing is, that something that kind of doesn't work is that we know what's going on. So we're always way ahead of Andrea Riseborough's character. We're always in the know. Like, we know what's happening. We know what's going on. And that's the thing that really doesn't do anything new. The only thing it does new is how the curse carries. But for the most part, it's just very procedural in the horror aspect. It really doesn't do anything new. So I think that's the thing that doesn't stick. But Pesci does a very, very good job of keeping kind of his way of filmmaking in this, and that's the thing that I really dig. And it does have it's got some really good shots. It's got a lot of blood and gore, which the Grudge, this reboot, remake, sequel is very bloody, and it's not really violent. It just has a lot of gore, and there's a couple really, really good special effects and gags in the film. But again, like I said, it's a very dark film. It really reminds me of watching, horror films like from 99 to 2003. There was this weird aesthetic that they had where everything's a little too dark, but it's it just has this kind of wet look, like Darkness Falls or Robert Harmon's They, Wes Craven pseudo-produced. It's just, they look like that, which I dig. I do like that look, but it didn't seem original for Pesci. But like I said, he's making his own movie, and obviously I think there would be a little bit of Hollywood and producers and execs working with him. So this probably 100% entirely wasn't his film. It was probably like, maybe 50. And you kind of do see his marks that he left in the film, especially the end credits sequence. It's a total Pesci move. But all in all, I mean, I dug it. I think there's going to be a lot of divided, takes on this, which, I mean, I guess is every film. But this one's I think will be a little bit more extreme. I think that it's really going to be kind of, I really hated this. It's the worst thing I've seen. To like, that's good. It's fine. I liked it, And I think that's kind of where I teeter on. Is I enjoyed what I saw. I liked it. I'm not going to go out and scream it from the rooftops that you need to go see the movie. But I think it's a worthy sequel reboot. I think things are done right. I think with the characters and the acting, it's really great. The score's good. It's got some okay scares, but ultimately it really takes the idea of The Grudge and makes its own movie. Which is something that I wasn't really a fan of. I really wanted a continuation, or stop Americanizing J-horror. I really, like I said, I thought Shimizu did a great job of remaking his movie, setting it in Japan, but also kind of Americanizing it for America, but also staying true to the roots. And I think that's what this one doesn't. It completely abandons everything. It abandons even the characters, which I understand. Maybe they're trying to stir away from everything, but also I don't think that really works for this type of story. But anyways, so that's pretty much it. This is kind of what we'll be doing. Like I said, we'll try to do this weekly. Next week will be Underwater, which we're excited about and we'll talk about. And like I said, all these are going to be very spoiler free, so you can go ahead and listen to it. Certain details, aspects will be told in order to, continue a conversation or maybe give hints of what you're in for. But for the most part, we'll keep it pretty quiet. This episode's a little bit longer, mainly because of the history of the Grudge and things like that. But we will try to keep them brief. So, anyways, thanks for listening. Hopefully you go see The Grudge and support. This is still, Sam Raimi and Ghost House Pictures, or is it Ghost House? There's like Dark Castle and like Ghost House back in the day. It was really weird to see that logo again on the big screen, the skeleton and the keyhole. But ultimately, have a good weekend, and we will see you on the show and other stuff like this. We're going to be putting out quite a few little episodes and a lot of content. So, we will talk to you later. Thanks for listening.
ocean.